In my opinion, he was just trying to understand me as a person, how I fit into the vibe of Zerodha. We had a good conversation. He just generally asked me about, again, thought process, what I did in my previous job, why would I leave it, why did I do an MBA, what did I do in my MBA, what sort of businesses I started, my entire experience. Towards the end of my interview, Nithin was like, okay, we'd love to have you in the team, and sort of the team will roll out an offer letter to you. Interestingly, I shot a LinkedIn message to Pratham around there. I'm like, I found this very interesting. Would love to chat a little bit about it. Wrote a nice long message to him, and he responded. He's like, okay, let's get on a call. Got on a call with him. Yeah, that's probably when I made my decision to come to Masters Union. I don't think I regretted one bit. But I think Masters Union, I would say, it's a place for people who really want to do something, who are driven. Not for everyone, again, for people who are genuinely driven, just don't want to ride on a brand and just like, okay, I've gotten into this and I'll get the output automatically. That's not how it works. It's a place for people who want to get in and work to do something. You'll get all the support you need, but you need to work towards it and you need to work to get it.
What a brilliant opportunity to be sitting with none other than the guy behind Business with Bansal, as you're also known. So let's get started. Let's get to know you a little bit and then we'll dive into our conversations. For the viewers, talk us a little bit about who you are, where are you today, and how does it feel?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me here. Feels amazing to be back on campus, and yeah, always good to be here. So yeah, I mean, most of us, a lot of people know me as Business with Bansal, but my name is Anurag Bansal. I've sort of had an identity crisis in the college now because of my surname. People call me Bansal around. So yeah, that's very interesting. But yeah, I've done my engineering. I'm an engineer, computer science engineer, and then I sort of worked for 2 years in a fintech startup in the lending space. Then sort of went on to do my Masters Union, my MBA from Masters Union. And yeah, that's pretty much been my journey so far.
Thrilled to have you, and I have watched you so many times on the video which is about Masters Union, so it feels almost like I know you already, but this is the first time we're getting into a conversation.
Yeah, it's actually a very weird position to be in, especially for me in Masters Union, because now that the fourth batch and the undergraduate batch, etc., has come in, whenever I sort of come to campus, they've seen me, but I've never seen them or spoken to them. So they're like, "Oh, we know you," but I'm like, so it's like a weird situation to be in. But yeah,
you know how a celebrity feels like.
Yeah, like just in the close space.
Would love to go back in time and get your reflections on when you were working and the first time the thought came to your mind that I think I need an MBA, right? Let's get your views on what really was that thought process. Why did you feel a need to do an MBA?
Actually, the thought was not when I was working. It was sort of somewhere around the first or second year of my engineering, rather. So, I got into engineering because one, it was a fad around then, computer science, things like those. And I was also very fond of gadgets. I used to watch a lot of these sci-fi shows, a lot of these make and break kind of shows on TV at that time. And I really loved it. Even as a kid, sort of whenever I had a toy in my hand, the first reaction to me used to be break it instead of actually play with it. I used to tinker a lot with things and stuff like that. So I was always that sort of a person who would sort of tinker with things, etc. So, my parents and I both sort of felt that I would be good as an engineer. And of course, since I love gadgets, I sort of decided to do computer science engineering. I went on to RV College of Engineering, which is in Bangalore. Did my computer science engineering, sort of started it, and 1 year into the program, I'm like, I don't think this is where I'd want to be. Now, even though, sort of there's more money in the tech space, etc., there's more power that people have, etc. And, you may not need to do a master's after you've done like a proper engineering course in the tech space, right? But, I thought, okay, maybe this is not really meant for me. This is not a place where I would personally be able to grow as much as, say the business side of things. I don't know if that comes from my background, my family, etc. I don't know where it comes from, but that's pretty much been the story. So that is when the idea of sort of getting into the management side of things, the business side of things, sort of got seeded into my head. And ever since, I've sort of worked my way towards moving away from tech. Even in college, pretty much it was a survival game for me. I was like, okay, I need to get through these 4 years to be able to sort of make something better or do something better, etc. I was part of the entrepreneurship cell and everything non-technical that I could ever get into. Right? So I tried my hands at a couple of startups with my friends, all these small college kind of startups, which never worked out. But yeah, so I did all those things. That's when sort of the idea was there. I was lucky enough to get a break as a product manager in a company. The company's name was Kuliza, spelled as Kuliza. So yeah, I was lucky enough to get that break. So it was like sort of a mixture of tech and business of sorts, wherein I was able to work with a bunch of smart people on like good problems. We had like clients like Standard Chartered, FE Credit, across Singapore, India, Vietnam, bunch of countries. So yeah, I sort of grew into a good role out there. So I was kind of enjoying my job out there. But yeah, again, lockdown happened. We were all working from home, constricted to a space. I'm like, okay, probably need to move ahead and do something else also. And that said, I just wanted some more exposure because I was, just working on my own, right? I was just living by myself, working on my own, just out of a single room. I don't know who to talk to, what to do, how would I grow from here, etc. And there seemed to be no end to the lockdown and this work from home scenario at that time. I'm like, okay, so interestingly, how I stumbled upon Masters Union was back in 2020 itself. So there was this article on Mint which said, Masters Union launches a 300 crore business school or something on those lines. So that's when I first read about Masters Union. I thought, okay, must be some course, something on those lines. I never paid attention at that time. But then, somewhere around just before the application process for me, I came across an InShort news piece. And I'm like, okay, wait, I've heard of this thing before. So, I sort of revisited and like, oh, this is pretty cool. Yeah, so I'm like, this is pretty cool, the masters, the curriculum, etc. And so since childhood, I've been that rebel kind of kid in terms of education where, I'm sort of always fighting against my parents saying, this is probably not the right way to educate myself. I should not be just sitting in one corner with my books, just writing, noting things down, etc. Probably I just want to go around, do things, break stuff, make stuff, things like those. I was always that kind of a personality by heart. And then when I saw Masters, I'm like, this is me. So I'm like, that was the immediate pull for me in that sense. I'm like, no brainer. So interestingly, I shot a LinkedIn message to Pratham around then. I'm like, very interesting. I found this very interesting. Would love to chat a little bit about you. And wrote a nice long message to him. And he responded, he like, okay, let's get on a call. Got on a call with him. That's probably when I made my decision to come to Masters Union, and I don't think I regretted one bit.
Super. When you were speaking, I was imagining the Amir Khan of Three Idiots, and probably that's the kind of people that are making sense of what Masters Union is all about. So
sure.
that's really cool. So, but if you were to pick one thing that made you choose an MBA, right? We'll get to Masters Union in a bit, but the need for doing something, what would that be?
I think just the community aspect of it, because again, like I was mentioning, in the COVID era, I was sort of just in my room, just with like my family members, three of my family members. We live in a nuclear family, so just three of us. It is a very lonely journey as such. I knew how it was to be in a hostel because I was. I came from an engineering background. I knew the learning really happens there. There's so much you can do, explore, talk to people. So much comes out of that, right? Nothing was really working out for me. So I thought, okay, just for the community aspect of it, just for, just living around more human beings for an extended period of time in a learning environment, which is why I wanted to do an MBA.
Yeah, the power of community is definitely strong. So how long did you work in that product role that you did before?
Just under 2 years.
Under 2 years. Super. And then when you felt a need to do it, the next step is to figure out where to go.
Yeah.
How did that thought process go through? You eventually did reach out to Pratham and all this happened, but what was in your mind? What were you thinking? What would it take for you to get into a B school? What were some elements that you were seeking in the right program?
Again, to be very fair, I didn't give it too much of a thought back then. But yeah, I was always fairly confident on my business acumen as such because, sort of come from a family wherein, a lot of my relatives are into business, etc. I come from a Mania family. So,
that's in the DNA.
That's in the DNA. Though my dad is not a businessman, but, a lot of my relatives, etc. So I've sort of grown up in that atmosphere, etc. So, that sort of always comes in by nature. Right. So yeah, I always was confident of that. So I didn't have any expectations from what I wanted out of an MBA, etc. I never gave that, too much of a thought. But yeah, sort of my initial plan was, the next year sort of prepare for GMAT, give GMAT and sort of fly abroad. But yeah, came across Masters Union, was really sold the moment I landed on the website because, like I said, it sort of really resonated with my personality and what I always used to fight with my parents for. So yeah, that's the moment I was like, okay, this is probably the place. If I do get into it, I am going for sure.
What were some other campuses that you were trying for? Had this not gone through?
I was not. That's what, right? So I would have ideally given GMAT next year, which would have been this year. Yeah, this year, and sort of either tried for an ISB or maybe Masters Union again, or flown abroad.
Cool. So interesting. So we're absolutely clear on what you wanted and laser sharp focus and just getting there, nowhere else.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Now let's talk about your life after you got in. How was those experience of getting into Masters Union? What were the initial few days? Maybe if you can recall a little bit of those real stories and experiences, I think it'll be fun.
Yeah, for sure. So it was very interesting, so there were these couple of Telegram groups that, got formed amongst applicants, etc., because all of us were curious about what was happening, when would we receive the results and things like those. So there were a few of us who sort of bonded over that, etc. And, there was an email which we got at around 6 o'clock on the day when the result was supposed to be announced, saying, your results will be announced tonight. And not tonight could mean anything, right? From 6 o'clock to like the next morning, it could be any time. So, it was like a kind of a roller coaster of sorts, an emotional roller coaster. All of us like, did it come? Did it come? Did it come? All of us were sort of texting each other constantly. So that was interesting. But yeah, that was the admission side of things. And then I did get through in the first round itself. I applied in the first round and I did get through it. So I was sure I was joining in, and the moment I sort of came to Masters Union, we had like a couple of months, between the admissions process, sort of after getting accepted and on the date of joining. So I had a couple of months between that. So we used that time to sort of form communities within our batch. Had a lot of pre-term activities, as we call it. So sort of got to know a lot of people, a lot of interesting people out there. So yeah, bonded with them, good fun. So yeah, when I came to Masters Union also, I think the culture as such was, everyone was interested in speaking to everyone, right? No one was sort of within themselves or within their friends group or within their undergraduate college groups as such. So everyone just wanted to go around and talk to everyone, which is what happened eventually. And, we very quickly made a lot of friends. All of us, I think, eventually started making friends very quickly. And that is probably comes from the personality of the people the Masters Union picked, I would say. But all of us were really, outspoken that way in terms of making friends and like, okay, yeah, we're here to network, we're here to meet more people, have fun. So that should be the goal.
When did the idea of becoming a creator get started? Is that something that happened on campus?
No, it actually didn't, interestingly. So this is again lockdown story. It's also a big regret of mine that I didn't start back then, because it was a time when there was like free reach, free views, free likes for everybody out there, because everybody was bored on the internet. But yeah, going back to that time, I think this was 2021, if I'm not mistaken, around the second wave of the lockdown. So I bought this 500, 600 rupee mic from Amazon, this, the wired mic of sorts. And I told my dad and mom that, I want to make videos on the internet. Like, what do you want to make it about? So I said, I want to sort of read case studies on the internet, because again, this again comes from the side of moving from tech to business. I was always interested in reading about brands. What do they do? What is so different? What does actually make them successful, etc. So that naturally came to me, and I was naturally interested in that. So at that time, I remember I was reading the case study around how Maggie sort of came back from that entire crisis situation, etc. So I'm like, why don't I sort of read these case studies? Go to Harvard website, go to a bunch of other websites, and pick up these case studies. Sort of make like my own, add on to it, my own second order thoughts on it.
Right.
And why don't I just do something on those lines?
Brilliant.
My parents were like, I mean, okay, but you're too young for it. Why would someone listen to your gyan on the internet? They're like, okay, a kid is talking, never mind. So I kind of bought that and never started around then. Only to realize later that, the world sort of changed, and, it's the meat that talks now and not really the age. That's probably a mistake that I made. Fast forward to Masters Union, the creator challenge happened, and obviously that trigger, was immediate, and I'm like, okay, I'm going for it all out. Same mic, I carried it to Masters Union. So same mic, I wore it. If you look at my initial few videos, you see like this small black mic on my collar. So yeah, that's how it got started. And the niche was obvious, business stories, business case studies, and that's how I started.
So it did happen because of Masters Union in a way.
The trigger was.
Yeah. Super, brilliant. And yeah, you have a unicorn last name for sure. So it had to be business. So, what are other unique things? Reflect on your Masters Union overall experience. What is really different or unique about doing this program?
I think it's the community again. I'll come back to the community part of it. I would say, okay, let me just break it down into engineering versus Masters Union MBA. With my engineering friends, of course, I'm still connected with a lot of them. A lot of them live around my area, work around my area, etc. So we keep catching up. The conversations are very different, right? Especially, when I'm meeting up with my friends from engineering, we talk about, how's it going, what's happening, bunch of other problems and things like those. We don't talk business, we don't talk work, we don't talk things like those. With my Masters Union friends, we have fun. We have those kind of discussions also. But the primary discussion by nature somehow just happens to be business. We're just debating on some business idea, some business topic. Something just comes up and everyone's just interested and engrossed in the conversation. It's just, I never expected this to happen, but it just somehow happens and it's just fun. Especially for someone like me who likes discussing all of these things and knowing about these things, it's really a good place to be. So that I think is something very unique about Masters Union. I'm not very sure if that's the case with other MBA colleges also. I can speak for Masters Union for sure. But yeah, that's a very good place to be in. When I'm catching up with my friends, even the friends I speak very regularly with, we pretty much speak around business, what's happening, stuff like those. So we enjoy that. That's like in the DNA of sorts.
So doing business is part of the DNA as that process.
Doing and talking business also.
Yeah, but what happens in the program that gets you to this? Talk a little bit about maybe some specific experiences that you did during the program. What are those top memories of building a business?
Yeah, for sure. So I think everyone probably watching this would know the curriculum fairly right now. There's dropshipping, creator challenge, local consulting or consulting challenge, VIP, which is the venture initiation program, etc. So people are fairly aware of the curriculum. I think that changes the thought process or the way people communicate with each other is that we work with each other in a lot of projects together, right? And these are all related. I sort of work with a bunch of friends on my dropshipping project, which is around selling lights, selling these strip LED lights for gamers. So I worked with a bunch of friends there. What were my discussions with those friends? Not other things. It was around business. How do we find a vendor? How do we calculate our P&L? How do we do this, that? What sort of jugaad can we do? And bunch of things like those. Create a challenge, very similar thing. Local consulting also, how do we figure out how to solve this problem? How do we figure out how to solve that problem? And it's not just in teams. You also communicate with different teams, right? How are you solving the problem? How are you solving the problem? People ask you, you ask other people. So those kind of discussions are sort of in the curriculum, right? So you develop that sort of a friendship with your friends or your peers in the batch, that you have those kind of discussions and that sort of continues by nature in a certain sense. So I think that's what the program, sort of does.
Did you get some, so this year I saw the drop shipping when students in the C4 had put together stalls in Worldmark.
Yeah.
There were very profound learning from those interactions. How did, if you recall, what were some of the things that hit you as Eureka that, hey, when you were doing drop shipping or any other project?
I think the biggest Eureka was I can do it. It's not so hard. That is as simple as that, right? It's simple yet so powerful. I can do it. It's not as hard as maybe the world makes it sound. Business, this, that. It's probably just going out there, dipping your feet in the water and probably just eventually jumping into it. It's just as simple as that. And then finding a way to swim around it. If you can't just get out of the water eventually, right? It's not so hard. You won't drown in it. So I think that was the Eureka moment I had. And the entire thing is right. We have a bunch of people, your friends come with different connections, different expertise, different backgrounds, etc. So all of them bring something different to the table. And we were all sort of calculative when we were building our teams. One person should come from this background, one person from that background, one person from a different background. So my team, for example, specifically for dropshipping, one guy came from an e-commerce background. So he built websites, he's done all these things. So one guy was a CA, so he did all the mathematics and all the calculations, etc. I was more on the branding side, how do we sell, what strategy do we use, how do we do this, that, etc. So all that put together, I think then we came together and, that entire being together in a team and being able to eventually make it work and generate revenue online, offline, everywhere, right? Events, everything. That confidence that you get is probably unparalleled. That, okay, it's just probably not that hard and you don't have to scale every business to become a unicorn or like a decacorn or anything of that sort, right? You can do businesses. It's not so hard as it may sound to a lot of people.
Yeah. And how much of this also had learnings on working with teams and building teams? That's like a foundation for any manager or eventually a leader of an organization. If you can't crack this, then you can't really execute the idea. So were there learnings or experiences around that
For
went
sure.
deep?
For sure. So I think one interesting thing that I've noticed is a lot of people on their CVs, on their whatever, applications, etc. Right? I'm good in leadership or team building, etc. Without sort of knowing the caveats of what really happens. What is really team building? What is leadership? Again, I'm no one to speak about it either because I don't understand it completely. But from my little experience, I understand that there's a lot more than just saying I can be a leader. It's not a group, a school project that you sort of led while making a chart paper drawing that makes you a leader. Getting into tough problems, getting into difficult situations with your closest friends really puts you in that spot where you have to come out of it and maintain that relation along the way, right? You'll have a lot of situations where your friends are busy doing something else. So, for example, I'll give you, without taking names, I'll give you an example from our drop shipping. So, there was this team member who we had who was preparing for IAS exams. Now, that team member could obviously not contribute as much, but again, in our minds, we had a lot of things. So it's a very small example to give, but you understand when you're looking at it from a larger perspective, when you're making real revenue, when you're making real businesses out there, when you're actually talking real money in lakhs, right? And you sort of
crores.
Or crores, whichever way. And you're looking at it from a larger perspective, then it really matters. It's not a school project which is only graded. There's real money involved, and and I would say money really brings out a true reflection of a person, right? So when there's money involved, people get greedy. People sort of start showing their true colors also. So I think that is where teamwork, leadership, etc., all of that sort of comes together and teaches you a lot. So that's not only for dropshipping, also for Creator Challenge, also for pretty much everything VIP, because you sort of try to raise funds, try to do a lot of jugaad, generate revenue, talk to a lot of people. So yeah, I think that entire, moving along with the team, not just growing individually, is what I think is the USP of this entire place.
Yeah, that's profound. So what would you say would be your leadership style after having done this? How do you approach working with people? What are one or two things that you are like unique to you? Or how do you like to work with people?
I don't know. It's very hard to put it in words as such. Never thought about it that way. But I probably would put myself as more of a calm person. I don't know. For some reason, people just get that calm, sort of serious vibe from me. Yet I like, so for me, it's very hard to be harsh on people, right? My peers, people sort of below me, above me, etc. It's very hard for me to be harsh on people. So I sort of, like, okay, chalo, we'll do it together, figure things out. So in the process, I also take a lot on myself. Think, okay, I'll also help you out. I'll also get involved in it. So, sort of get used on in certain times when people are smart enough to, get sort of the better of me. But yeah, I think that's kind of teamwork or leadership style that I have. Just work along with everyone. I just believe no one can grow individually. You have to involve a bunch of people and all of you grow together. That's the way we move forward.
Brilliant. I think that's going to take you places. That's very, very strong. Let's go to the last leg of the second phase that we want to talk about was on careers, right? And more career dilemmas, right? When you look at yourself and your peers at that time, when you were wanting to get into jobs or figure out what you're going to be doing, some of them were taking a startup route versus whether startup or take up a job. What was your mind like, and then how did you seek clarity to move away from those dilemmas? So you landed at a great place. We'll get to that later. But how was managing that dilemmas, and who kind of helped you in that process? And that'll be very useful for our viewers.
Right. So I think initially I had a very startup mindset. In fact, my essay, which we sort of write to get into Masters Union, the entire application essay was around my startup idea, which I wanted to build, which was around event sponsorship, sort of building a marketplace to enable event sponsorships for corporates, for colleges, etc. So that was around the idea I wanted to sort of build. I really believed in that problem, etc., etc. When I came to when I came to college, I believe that marketing is like the thing I sort of naturally want to get into, because whenever I do something purely out of interest or purely without any end goal to it, it somehow ends up to be something related to marketing, right? So I started a small blog where I wanted to help small businesses get visibility, ran Google ads on it and things like those. Then my channel also, for that matter, is in marketing in a certain sense. Bunch of other things that I did here and there, small things, insignificant things also. But I realized my natural inclination is towards marketing. So it was either I start up in the marketing space or I do something that's related to marketing or something on those lines, right? So that's how my thought process changed. Then sort of I went to the careers team. There's a dedicated careers team in Masters Union which sort of talks to you, mentors you, blah, blah, blah. And so spoke to them, understood what can I do really, what other things. I had like a detailed conversation with Richa from careers team. She suggested, look at a founder's office role wherein, while you might be good in marketing, the thing is you don't have an experience there. So it's going to be very hard for you in like a very short period of time to be able to prove your worth in marketing, right? Unless you sort of have like a breakthrough in some sector, which is again a very small probability, right? So why don't you look at a founder's office kind of a role where you can explore multiple things, maybe get into more on the marketing side of thing, and then sort of dive deeper into it or double click into that and move forward into that area and such, which kind of resonated with me. So that is when this was I think around November last year, which sort of resonated with me. I'm like, okay, it makes sense. And yeah, that's how I eventually decided, okay, let me sort of move the founder's office route. Regarding startup, that was always in my mind. I want to start up. In fact, even the VIP, we tried a bunch of things, built a team, built a product. Started building a product, things like those. But yeah, somehow, the opportunity landed up on my desk and it was too good probably in my mind to let go of. So yeah, I sort of had to pick and choose on my own. So yeah, I think it is more of the peer pressure because I'm like, if I sort of leave a Zerodha, which is where I'm working at, I'm like, okay, people are going to say, are you mad? What's wrong with you? People don't get it. And if you get it, you're going to be stupid to leave it, right? Yeah. So that sort of played in my head. I'm like, okay, I think it's probably good decision to take it.
Yeah. So that's such a profound thing that you're saying you were inclined towards marketing, but because of that mentoring from the careers team, that actually changed that trajectory, and that's how you found what you found.
Yeah.
Which is gold.
Yeah.
Super.
I think just my nature of being first principles, right? I always believe first principles is a very powerful way to go forward. Frameworks, formulas, etc. always exist. It helps you. But the people who built those frameworks and formulas also did it via first principles in the first place, right? And those were the real smart folks. So I think first principles, thought process, approach, etc. Fitting a framework into everything and anything that comes in front of you probably does not work in life. And I see a lot of people doing that unnecessarily, just to sound very smart. They fit in jargons, frameworks, this, that, etc. I don't think it works. May work for some people, but I don't think it works. So I think that in hindsight might have helped me sort of craft my profile in a certain way, etc., to sort of resonate with the Zerodha. Again, all of that happened unconsciously. I didn't know what I was doing. But yeah, I think that just sort of resonated and got me there.
How did the opportunity came by your way? Talk about that real story now. How did Zerodha happen?
Yeah, so, one fine day, got an email from the careers team saying, applications invited for Zerodha. Around then, Dipankar, who happens to be my immediate senior, was also undergoing his process. So, sort of there is Zerodha. In a 2-3 month span, both Dipankar and I got into Zerodha. So Dipankar being my senior and me being the next batch. So yeah, one fine day, the email came in saying applications invited for Zerodha, etc. Sort of there was a small questionnaire to be filled. I made a PPT of it. Interestingly, the third question I specifically remember was explain stock markets to a young kid or a 5-year-old or something on those lines. I thought, okay, let me make a video on it. I'll do something different. Let me make a video on it. Eventually, that happened to be the first video of my channel. So that's how my channel started. A bunch of my classmates and said, oh, this video actually looks good. Why don't you do this for Creators Challenge? I'm like, okay, So initially, I was deciding to do long videos as such, detailed case studies videos, etc. So when I did that small video for Instagram for Zerodha, my friends told me, why don't you try this? You're sort of good at it. Seems to have come out well. You'll obviously improve over time. So why don't you give this a shot and then go into long videos later? So that's how my channel sort of also started coming into shape. now Zerodha's process went on for like 2 to 3 months. There were like multiple rounds, multiple waiting periods of sorts. When they didn't get back, when things like that happened. In the process, I'd already built my channel to quite some extent. And then my channel also sort of helped me improve my case to the team, because by the time I had my interviews with them, my channel was fairly there. Right? So I'd uploaded like 20-30 videos of sorts. So yeah, my channel was there. So my channel actually started getting built because of Zerodha. And I also got into Zerodha because of my channel. So it's like a weird situation. But yeah, that's how it came about. Pretty much, if I could talk about the kind of rounds I had, first was, of course, just filling in sort of questionnaire of sorts around how I approach whatever I do, the questions, etc. Then we had, so Zerodha has this education arm called Varsity. So they also have this small certified test of sorts, wherein they have like so they ask you to complete a few modules, which includes your generic stuff about stock markets, your fundamental analysis, technical analysis, and a bunch of things like those. Then there's a test, so you have like a 75% passing marks on it, and once you clear it, so if you move to the next round. So after that EPT, then I moved to that varsity round. After which they sort of asked me to make a video, another detailed video on bunch of prompts they'd given us. So made that. After they liked all of that, I think pretty much I was the only one who was remaining in the process after that. So it was me or no one that year. Then I had an interview with 6 folks from the team, 6 folks from the founders office team. Again, intimidating to start with. 6 people in the the core team of Zerodha.
Together or one by one?
Together
like
in one call. Yeah. And all of them were active on the call. It's not like one person or 2 people speaking. So yeah, all of them active on the call, sort of asking me questions around what I've done, why I think the way I think, things like those. So that happened. They sort of liked my profile, I'm fairly guessing. And yeah, that is when they said, okay, we will fly you down to Bangalore, come meet Nithin. He'll sort of take your last round. And 6th of January is when I met Nithin. Had a half-an-hour conversation with him. Again, fanboy moment of sorts. I eventually ended up taking a picture with him at the end.
Is that the one you posted on Instagram?
No, that's much later.
That's much later.
Yeah, so I posted the other one much before. But yeah, I ended up taking a picture with him. But towards the end of my interview, Nithin was like, okay, we'd love to have you in the team, and sort of the team will roll out an offer letter to you soon. So yeah, that's how I knew I gotten in.
Super. And when did you eventually join?
I joined in April. So I thought I'd come here for the course in the first place, not to get placed like I was mentioning, right? Course and the entire thing. So I thought, let me just live the course a little more. Since I had the luxury and the flexibility of having that time. Plus, I wanted to complete a little bit of my credits also, the academic credits that I needed to do. So I sort of pushed hard in those 2-3 months, finished all my credits, and sort of moved out. Actually, I worked from home for a month. May is when I moved out. So I managed college and work April. And May is when I moved out to Bangalore.
Brilliant. So now let's talk about Zerodha. How is it? Tell us a little bit about that conversation with Nithin.
So yeah, I think very interesting. So there's this. So there's a room, like a bigger conference room of sorts, where I was sitting and interacting with the 6 people who had initially interviewed me online. So they were sort of just saying hi, hello to me while Nithin was sort of finishing up a couple of other meetings. And then Nithin comes from behind me and sort of just keeps his hand on my shoulder. And then I turn around, I'm like, shit, Nithin Kamath. So I'd always seen him on TV, on YouTube and things like those. I'm like, shit. So yeah, just like a very weird situation to be in. In fact, very interestingly, I had my CV in my bag. I thought I'll take it, when they call me inside to meet Nithin. I didn't know Nithin will come outside. So yeah, I forgot to take my CV for my interview, interestingly. So that also happened. So yeah, we had a good conversation. He just generally asked me about, again, thought process, what I did in my previous job, why would I leave it, why did I do an MBA, what did I do in my MBA, what sort of businesses I started, my entire experience and things like those. So yeah, I think, so he was just trying to understand me. In my opinion, he was just trying to understand me as a person, how I fit into the vibe of Zerodha. And probably liked me and...
What is the vibe of Zerodha? Let's talk about that. People from the outside see it as a massive company that is a poster boy for India, bootstrap.
Yeah.
I've stopped counting the net profit that they release every time. But what is the vibe and what is the culture like inside?
I think culture is great. It's very different from how a regular corporate would work, or whatever corporate we read about, we think about is not what Zerodha is essentially, right? It really works like a home. You could think about it that way. Pretty much all team members sort of operate like a family in a certain sense. We all sort of joke around together, play around together. So it's very homely. The vibe is very homely. Even Nithin sort of interacts with us, pretty much normally. He's not like a boss or a CEO to us. He's pretty much like a friend to us. Again, we have that sort of line of respect of sorts. So that's always there. But Nithin always treats us like, peers or friends of sorts. So that's there. Thought process wise, again, most of the Zerodha employees have been around for like 10 years, 8 years. That's pretty much how it's been. And I think Zerodha is popular for low attrition. So a lot of people have probably read about Zerodha's low attrition. So yeah, as a result, naturally, people have been here for quite some time. And so again, not too many people in Zerodha come from like good pedigree colleges, good pedigree institutions. There are people who dropped out from school. There are people who are barely graduates, very less postgraduates, pretty much no MBAs of sorts. So yeah, that's how Zerodha team has been built, which also results in very first principles thinking in a lot of ways. There are no jargons, no frameworks, which is why I think it's sort of associated and sort of vibe with my personality also. But that's the kind of vibe that Zerodha has, right? So we don't have like dedicated teams for a lot of things. We don't have, we have like mutual discussions, like how two friends would sort of discuss on a startup idea and then eventually solve it the next day. That's pretty much the vibe of it, if I could put it that way. So, as large as the company may look on the outside, on the inside, it's like pretty much like a bunch of friends working together.
How cool is that? How big is the team now?
Somewhere around 1,000 people. So that's the entire team. Founders office team, like we call it the Z team internally, is about 35 people. Again, everyone donning different hats, doing different things, but 35 odd people now.
Wow. So everybody effectively 2 crore net profit per employee? Is that the number?
A little more maybe.
Super. So, now when you look at work life, let's do a comparison to what, when you are in an MBA program, thinking of a work life versus now. During the placement process, particularly, people tend to look at objectives like a salary number, like the role, like the company.
Yeah.
What I hear you talk about is people more than these three things.
Yeah.
So has the typical belief from that time to now changed? And tell us a little bit about that. Because that's something that people get into the program that, hey, I'm going to get into a master's union or an Ivy League kind of a program and this is going to be sorted. And mostly that is money or role.
Yeah.
So did you think like that when you came into the program, and did that belief change later?
I mean, everyone likes money. Let's be very brutally honest here. Everyone likes money. I think most of the people, I don't want to put a percentage to it, but most of the people who do an MBA do it because they want to jump in their salary or, whatever opportunities, etc. For me, of course, that played a factor because, again, human being after all, that did play a factor because I wanted to jump in the amount of money I earned, etc., etc. But for me personally, what mattered a little more was the kind of things I was working on, right? I wanted to work on quality stuff with quality people, right? It mattered very less to me where they came from, who they are, etc., what age group they belong to, and things like those. What really mattered to me is in the long term, one, will I be able to sustain? And two, will I be able to enjoy this process? I don't want to be upset or, annoyed by the entire setup, etc. and just be surviving in the atmosphere just because I have ESOPs that invest in 2 years from now. So just surviving for that atmosphere, I didn't want to do that personally. That said, again, Zerodha was a happenstance. It was not really in my control or my choice as such. I got lucky is what I would say. I was fortunate enough to have gotten this opportunity and sort of being able to crack it. But yeah, I think sort of somewhere or the other, the thought process was always there to sort of work on good problems for the longer term. Immediate money. Again, that also comes from a position of privilege. I don't come from like a very a family where I sort of need to pay bills for my parents also. My parents are fairly self-sufficient, thankfully, by God's grace. So I don't have to pay bills for them. So I'm not really responsible to take care of my family at this stage. So I have that privilege to sort of play around and try things out. So again, that does come from a position of privilege. But yeah, I think that's always been in the nature that, I want to work on problems. Money can be a little secondary in that sense.
Right. So is it correct if I hear you say that, or maybe you should clarify that, if you were to give it as a piece of advice to younger or future cohorts, what would you want them to over-index on versus all the parameters that is? I'm not saying money is not important. By all means, money can move mountains, as they say. So, but do we realize the importance of, let's say, when I hear you talk about the homely atmosphere of the tightly knit team at Zerodha, do we index that enough early on when we are looking at companies and when we are doing projects and internships? What is the feel like among peer group? What are they over-indexing on at that time? And then does that change later?
Well, I think most people sort of optimize for the kind of domain they want to get into and the kind of salaries they want to get into is what I've noticed, right? Which is fair, from the position they come in from. Now, again, there's no blanket answer to this, but pretty much it comes from where you are in life, what age you are, what family sort of background you come from, what are your roles and responsibilities. Again, also which city you live in. For example, if you're living in Mumbai, your expectations would be a lot different from, say, if you're living in Bhopal. Right. Sure. So a lot of things really, change depending on where you are, what you're doing, and things like those. But I think one fundamental thing still remains is: are you enjoying what you're doing? Right. If you don't, you can be earning like a 1 crore package or a 2 crore, 5 crore, any crore package. If you don't, you won't sustain. You can earn it for 1 year, but then you sort of lose it eventually, right? So the idea is sort of to sustain it, sort of build that capital over time. Also grow your intellect in the process, make more connections, because like I was also mentioning earlier, you can't grow alone in life, right? You need help, you need support, you need people around you. So sort of you need human beings around you, right? To keep you happy, because eventually that's what we work for, right? You can't have all the money and sit alone in a corner. You can't do anything with that money.
Correct.
So people is what you really need. So I think focusing on building connections over the long term, building that capital, things like those.
Correct. So let's talk about Zerodha. What is the next? I hear the new fund. What is the exciting things that are boiling inside? What can you tell us about Zerodha?
I think the core philosophy of Zerodha, Nithin keeps pointing this out, is helping people do better with their money. As simple as that, right? We have customers. We want customers. Not at the cost of we don't want customers to lose money at the cost of our revenue, right? So we don't want to push people to trade. Okay, take this trade. This is cool. This is that. If you notice, Zerodha never sort of gives advice or tells people do this, that. They never nudge people to do a certain thing. They nudge people against buying penny stocks or against risky activities as such. So I think that's the core philosophy around which Zerodha has been built. So I think I can't obviously reveal too much about what's in the pipeline, etc. But I think that's the core philosophy in which Zerodha operates. So anything and everything that fits the bill and makes sense to the business.
As a user, I see that notification every time I log in that 9 out of 10 people lose money. So it's actually a positive nudge not to trade. So that's phenomenal.
So that interestingly is actually not a very Zerodha specific thing. It's actually a SEBI mandated requirement which Zerodha fulfills. For some reason, the other brokers show it once in a while and sort of let go of it. I'm not sure about how the regulations play out there, but that's actually a regulatory requirement.
But you do it every login.
We do it every login.
Super. What kind of content are you creating now? Are you getting time to create content?
Yeah, I am. I think that entire hustle culture or the entire culture where you're okay working or stretching your hours for something you probably like doing is sort of ingrained in me because I worked for a startup before this. Then Masters Union happened, which was obviously a very hectic time in my life. And then now that I'm working with Zerodha, it's, I relatively have my schedule fixed in terms of my timelines, etc. So I get to do a bunch of things outside work, and that's also something we are pushed to do in work, right? So we have all these challenges and things like those which sort of push us to try out different things outside our work environment. So content is one thing that comes in for me. So yeah, I think, my nights, I usually try and read up on things. I really like reading up on businesses and what's happening around and what's the news going around with startups, different companies. So a bunch of things like those, right? So I really like to analyze and discuss with a lot of my friends also on what's happening. So yeah, I eventually end up making videos on those and share stories around what's happening. So yeah, part of the process, I also get to meet and talk to a lot of interesting folks who I would otherwise not have interacted with. So I get to go to a lot of events, get to speak to a lot of different entrepreneurs, creators, bunch of people like those. So yeah, that way I think it's a good place to be in. And yeah, content-wise, I completely focus it on business and things. So for me, it's very simple. If there's a piece of news or a piece of business information that I find interesting, I try to do like a basic second order thought process on it and sort of make a video on it, right? So if I find it interesting, my thought process is that a bunch of others will find it interesting, and I would want to build a community around myself, people who think like me or people who have like a similar thought process as me. I think that's a good place to be. I don't want to look at like a 1 million follower number, etc. But as long as I'm building a meaningful community around it, it's good enough for me.
Right. That's like a mini playbook of other creators wanting to create content. That's like a very easy stuff to get inspired from. But also let's hear, what does a day in your life look like? What time do you start? What time do you end? What all goes in? Talk us a little about that.
Yeah, I used to be a late riser, but now I think sort of these health initiatives at Zerodha has sort of made me an early riser because I've started working out a little bit, which I would earlier not. So I've started to wake up a little early in the morning. I do a bit of a workout, go to office. I come back by around 7ish. Sometimes we also go from work to play badminton. Some sport. So I personally love playing sports. So whenever there's a chance, I don't typically miss that chance to play sports. So yeah, it's pretty much sports. Then coming home, either reading something or writing on something. So yeah, pretty much very simple day.
How early is your early morning rise now?
Oh, for me, it's 7. For some people, it might not be very early, but for me, I'm used to waking up at like 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, 7 is pretty early.
Yeah, super. So, who are some of the most special people from Masters Union that come to your mind? Who are those top 3 names?
You mean peers?
Anyone who you met in Masters Union who you feel are most special when you go back in memory?
I think Pratham definitely, top of the list. Pratham's definitely been like a very inspiring person as such to look at. For the reason that, like I was mentioning, I reached out to him in the very beginning. I sort of had a phone conversation with him, and sort of he's supported me quite a bit. He's even through the creator journey, etc. He's spoken about me quite a bit. Told a lot of people about my channel and things like that. So I think a lot of respect for him for especially for building this institution also. So Pratham definitely yes. Of course, a lot of my friends, I would not want to sort of categorize them into like good, bad, or like less bad, etc. But yeah, but I think a couple of professors I can recall, right? Masters, rather, as we call it here. So one is Professor CD, Chandradeep Das, as we call him, CD here. So he taught us branding. So I think the way I look at brands and how I perceive brands now has really changed. Bhupesh sir and Chandradeep Das sir both sort of change the lens with which I would probably ever look at a brand or advertisement, right? Earlier, when I would look at a TV advertisement or an advertisement on YouTube, I would like, okay, cool. Like, this is the product, this is the advertisement, this is the story, done. Now I'll probably dive like 10 levels deeper into it and sort of understand. This is just a natural change that I've seen in myself. And I think I've discussed this with a bunch of my friends also in the batch. A lot of them have seen that change within themselves. So that I think has been like a good thing. So Chandradeep Das sir and Bhupesh sir, these two people have been great. Another one has been Anshu Parashar. So he's the CEO, if I'm not mistaken, he's the CEO of Whiteboard Capital, VC fund. So he taught us venture capital, as a course per se. So he told us a lot of realities of the venture capital industry, sort of put us through a lot of situations and things like those. So that is very interesting to attend. So he changed a lot of my perspectives around how I thought about startups, venture capital, just generally startups raising money and things like those. So I think that is a very interesting person, I sort of met. So yeah.
Super. Now, we all know you are good at, or you love creating videos, right? What if we give you a challenge of creating a short video right now and talk about, hypothetically, let's say everybody in cohort 5 was to look at this video and decide their make up their mind whether to go for this or not.
Yeah.
You talk about businesses. You talk about a business school, which is Masters Union, in a short video. And let's hear what you have to say.
Yeah, you just put me on a spot. No, but I think Masters Union, I would say it's a place for people who really want to do something, who are driven. Not for everyone, again, for people who are genuinely driven, just don't want to ride on a brand and just like, okay, I've gotten into this and I'll get the output automatically. That's not how it works. It's a place for people who want to get in and work to do something. You'll get all the support you need, but you need to work towards it and you need to work to get it. So that's one, right? And, second thing is the peer group is fantastic. The kind of people you meet out here, very, very diverse. I would say I have a lot of friends who are studying at IIMs, ISBs, even colleges abroad. I don't think culturally, maybe yes, abroad universities are a lot more culturally diverse, but Masters Union for that matter brings a lot of diversity in terms of what people know and where people come from, right? So some are e-commerce specialists, some people are into branding, some people are just dancers, some people are influencers, some people are this, that, I have a bunch of people around you. And having 200 different personalities of sorts really changes the way you think, changes the way you collaborate. And so, yeah, that's like a great, great place to be in. And it's all a result of how the admissions process is, right? And how the school sort of takes in people. So I think that's a plus. So I think, a lot of people keep asking me, how do I decide whether Masters Union is right for me, etc. One thing I keep telling everyone is just look at all the content that's out there on the Masters Union YouTube channel, Instagram channel, and a bunch of places. If need be, if you're around in Delhi, NCR, just come down to the campus, check the vibe out. If you genuinely think this is something that resonates with your personality, with something that you would really, really want to do and just not for the heck of doing it, then come here. Nothing's meant for everyone. Let's be honest about it. No, an IIM is not meant for everyone. A Masters Union is not meant for everyone. But if you really think you pass the vibe check, you pass the way, you think the way we learn here, we do stuff here, really resonates with what you are, with how you want to do things, then come here, you'll definitely do well. So yeah, that's a little bit of a longer video, but...
Typically, how long is the video that you post?
I think YouTube Shorts and Instagram has like a 60-second limit on it. Yeah, so that's
super. So let's do a plug about your channel as well. Let's talk about your channel and what kind of content you create. So maybe a 30 seconds kind of elevator about Business with Bansal. Follow me if you like what. So give us a 30-60 seconds pitch of that.
No, so I simply create videos on businesses, business strategies, business stories, what cool stuff businesses are doing. It could be advertising, it could be stories, it could be strategies, just about everything around businesses. So if you're curious about sort of following what businesses do, just out of pure interest or for the interest of building your own business someday, then probably that's the place, probably I'd like you to follow me as well.
Follow business.
Follow business with Bansal.
Great. All right.